some of you definitely look familiar and some of you are kind of new. I'll quick introduce myself. Once again, I'm Charlie Krueger, and I happen to be one of the Space Center workers, and in the audience I have a fellow co-worker, John Yoder, and it's kind of neat to get to come back again. I've mentioned this in the past, but it wasn't that long ago, around 2010-ish, that I left the space shuttle program and moved to Orlando, which was just right over off of Goldenrod, where I had just a little bit off of Goldenrod, where I lived in an apartment complex close to university. So pretty close, and I lived there for a bit, to then meander around a little bit, back to the Space Center, and then I found you all. You found me, however it works. And so I've had a couple talks in the past, and the most recent one was geared towards self-awareness. And pretty powerful tool to use. And this talk today is going to be pretty fun in regards to how to use your self-awareness, and also realize that your self-awareness is heavily impacted by those that have influenced you since birth. And so the title of this one happens to be Karmic Ripples. And that's a real fun topic to open up with. And everyone's heard the word karma and sort of how that works. And most of us think of it, oh man, what did I do to deserve this? Or something along those lines. And the way that you can think of it from the karmic ripple effect is, like if you throw a rock into a pond, there'll be the big splash and then little ripples come away from it. And so think of it each time that you make a decision or your reaction. Because in this life, that's the only control we really have, is our reactions to things, which are heavily influenced by so many factors, and we'll kind of touch on some of those. But no matter what, each of your karmic ripples, good or learning lessons, you get feedback, sometimes instantaneous, sometimes it's years later, decades later, you never know. And so just kind of roll with it, if some stuff's coming your way. Some of it's just directed toward you or indirectly towards you. And it wasn't anything you did at all, so you just you'll know what affects you and what you need to learn from. Or most of the time, if it's something that doesn't sit right, it's like, okay, it doesn't bother me, but what part of me is bothered by it? And so there's your clue on what you get to do. In a way, the medicine is in the pain of whatever the situation might be for you. So, well, I had this topic and I thought about it endlessly. One of my earliest teachings that I got, which happens to be right around that 2010 mark when I found yoga, which is up in Altamont Springs, Kundalini Yoga. And one of the main teachers advised me to read a book, 2 books actually, and I couldn't find one of them on Audible, so I ended up opting for Don Miguel Ruiz's The 4 Agreements. Have many heard of this before and read it? Oh, very good. So there'll be some refresh for sure. But it's fun to play with it and see how it comes together. And yeah, we'll just go for the most part right into it. What's really important to understand is from birth and whoever raised you all the way up, it could be influences from pets you had to your different parents, siblings, coaches, teachers, bosses, whatever it is, people you pass in the airport or whatever the case is. Everybody's here to teach each other something, whatever it might be. And so there's a series or system of agreements that we make. Some things, take for example, you didn't have much of a choice. Like you didn't choose your name, you didn't choose your religion, you didn't choose where you live, your language, your neighbors, whatever the case is. These are just kind of brought to you, or somewhere along the lines, kind of roll the dice type of thing. And so with all these different influences that you have throughout your lifetime, the agreements that you make, like this is how I do this is how I react to that, those sorts of things you're taught. And some things you've learned that, oh, that agreement doesn't quite fit me anymore, you know, I shouldn't be mean to people, you know, even though they're mean to me, or whatever the case might be. Maybe I'm too nice and I say yes too much. And so with that philosophy, it's really important to understand that sometimes you really need to allow your yes to say no, just to save your own sanity for that matter. But we'll go right into the 4 agreements. Very well written book, and I brought a copy of it if it's something that you guys would like to keep and pass around amongst yourself, or at least get to see it if anything inspires within you. This is really neat information. I remember someone that told me, or got me into reading stuff like this, and I remember mentioning it, and he was like, oh man, I read the 4 agreements, and I only thought that that was the only, you know, thing. There's a lot of just single author books or single book authors out there. And the guy that told me about it, or I asked if he had read it, and he goes, I like all this stuff. And so he has, his family's history has a whole lot of books, and they're really good at, like, I call this like my base information. It's pretty simple to understand, and it takes a lifetime to continuously practice it. But it's pretty simple. Like we have 4 agreements that we're going to, well, we'll end up learning 5 agreements, and that's all there really are today. But the way that you approach these is, like I said, it's really simple to understand, but the application of it can get very difficult because of your pre-agreements that you made and working past them, with them, whatever the case might be. So we'll just jump right into it, and I'll try not to dive around too much, but sometimes I do. No matter what, here we go. The first agreement is very powerful. It's probably the most crucial of all of them. That's why they gave it the first agreement. Oh, let me back up just a little bit. So Ruiz's family are referred to as the Toltecs. It's the early Mayan spiritual people. And it's really eloquent information and quite applicable. You could live a life just basing it off of that. I happen to like all of the teachings, so I just sort of choose what seems to fit with me. And this one keeps coming back, and it's there forever, I'm sure now. But no matter what, we're going to go into the first agreement, and you're already doing it and you know it, but its implications kind of hard to understand. Take, for example, the current or past political movements that are happening, different bosses you've had. And when I go to the political part of it, we'll just say who's running all the countries. And you can look throughout history, and you can take it from as high up as who might be the president or the leader of any country, and then you trickle it down all the way down to where we first started this conversation with your parents being your first sole source of rules of engagement per se. And the first agreement is that we are to be impeccable with our word. And the impeccability part of it is roughly stated that you don't speak sin upon yourself and minimize that kind of inner chatter, or whatever the case is. Knowing that wars have been fought over people's ability to be impeccable with their word. They'll get an idea in their head, and then they convince an entire nation to do stuff. We've been in world wars before over these types of philosophies. And while the rest of the populace is, well, what's going on? I remember Muhammad Ali was put in prison because he wouldn't go fight in the Vietnam War. And he's all, why would I go over there and shoot somebody? I'd rather just sit in a bar and have a beer with, you know, kind of a thing. And so we naturally feel to be at peace, but there are obviously some that don't. And a lot of that's going to come from their upbringing and how they were raised. I mean, if I raise a child here, they're going to get what I can give them, and it's definitely going to be a little bit different than, say, a child growing up in the Gaza Strip right now. You know, get heavily influenced by a multitude of things. But the self-awareness part of it is so that you can be here now instead of there then type of thing, and realize that while that's happening, my responsibility is how I react to things, therefore affecting my karmic ripples. So being impeccable with your word is crucial. It's not only what you tell people, but mostly what you're telling yourself too. And just go through, and with each of these agreements I'm going to share with you, when you catch yourself breaking an agreement with yourself, whatever you've adopted, and you know it's to be a good one, I promise you the ones I'm going to share with you are good. They're sound. But you may adopt some of your own, and I probably have 100 agreements when it comes down to it, because they don't capture everything. And so when you catch yourself breaking an agreement, you don't beat yourself up with it. You know, think of the gazelle that's running from a lion and stumbles, almost gets caught, maybe even gets a little scar on its back hind or something like that, but he gets away. Do you think that gazelle spends any time worrying about that slip up? No, most of the time not. They're in a survival mode all the time, which we can catch ourselves in too. If you're in a fight or flight survival mode all the time, you're always going to be anxious, and it could affect all these agreements I'm about to mention. And so what you're to do is you just simply pat yourself on the back and, okay, I'll get it next time. And then you just move on to the next situation, which then we're going to filter right into the very next one, which is an equally fun one. It's you don't take anything personally. And we'll play with the self-awareness part of this too. You don't take anything personally for many reasons. And we'll just address how things come. But the idea is that anything that anyone says, does, or any action that you perceive has nothing to do with you. It's kind of like the leaders that are talking to you over the internet or news conferences or boss meetings or whatever the case is. Everything that is driven to us is impersonal. And from my previous speech talking about how everything is impersonal, it's the agreements that we've made that bounce around in your head that alter that information, and we make it personal. You must not like me. Someone calls you a jerk. Well, they're actually reflecting what they saw in you reminds them of themselves, even though it had nothing to do with you. Maybe sometimes it does, but you'll know it. You'll know it. Sometimes I'm a jerk, so I have to check myself. My kids will call me out quite well. They like this information. And so when you think of don't take anything personal, because anything anyone says or does is a reflection of themselves, this is where you turn it in on yourself and think about how, well, here it fits. Anything you think, say, or do is a reflection of yourself. And so be mindful of your thoughts, all of them. How many do you have? In this book, it talks about the Mexican word, Spanish word is mitote, which is kind of like 1,000 voices talking at once. Yoga talks about the monkey mind. But no matter what, these are all the agreements that you've made, from this person teaching you this person teaching you that. And they'll bounce around in your head until whatever seems to fit. And then you make the appropriate reaction. And you might upset somebody, or you might actually get a hug out of it. You never know, right? And so when you really reflect back on the don't take anything personal, and like I said, remember the gazelle, don't beat yourself up for taking something personal. Okay, I won't do that again, because that actually hurts me, puts me in a bad mood, I'm depressed all of a sudden, or whatever the situation is. And so now we're going to float right into the third agreement, which is real interesting, because I know that we're all guilty of this too, where you're going to, the rule is you don't make assumptions, ever. The key to fighting that directly is ask the question that you need to ask, or simply let it go. it might be a repeat question that you keep asking, Mom, can I have a candy bar? Mom, can I have a candy bar? Mom, can I have a... Well, no, it's always going to be the same answer, so you're going to learn not to do that. But you can apply it to however you want. I'm sure you're thinking of a million things right now. But just be mindful of making assumptions, you know. Someone might look like something, or someone might say something that offends you, but you're like, oh, shit, the context was a little bit different. You can sometimes just pick it up. Body mannerisms really sell a lot too. But just be mindful to be willing to ask the question and get a good answer so you can make a better informed decision. And then we'll float right into the very last one, which is, this is kind of what's very important and dynamic in that you always do your best, you know, knowing that your best may change throughout the day, throughout the year, whatever the case is. You wake up right away in the morning, maybe you got good sleep, and so you're really refreshed. And how you perform right then and there, okay, maybe it's after you had coffee, but whatever. However, once you get going, you just always put forth your best effort, but allow for, at the end of the day, when you're tired, you're not going to be able to perform near as well. And there we are, we beat ourselves up. I should be able to do this right now, and then you feel bad, and then you can't sleep that night because you didn't get anything done, or you don't think you got anything done. And keep in mind that from time to time, it's okay if all you do all day long is just breathe. Keep that in mind, though. Keep breathing. That's pretty important to do. But no matter what, I mean, for an example, I remember, I think it's out of the book. Yeah, it is. The Forrest Gump. It's a great example. Look at how much verbal abuse he received, I mean, other than from his own mother or whatever. And he just kept doing his best with his own limitations, and look what he pulled off. I mean, it's movie written, but you'll know people in your lifetime that they're just doing their thing, and they're causing no conflict, and they're just riding through it. And it ends up being a very self-serving tool, because even when you're sick, you know, you're feeling the flu, your best is just to lay there and get healthy again, get your rest, stay hydrated, eat good food, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then you get to play into feeling good about yourself. And so these 4 agreements, I feel, are incredibly powerful to remind yourself of how to conduct within your own self, to limit the negative karmic ripples that you cast out with each of your reactions. No matter what, you're always going to upset somebody, and one you can upset somebody just by being, like I said, too nice, or whatever the case is. They're used to always being yelled at, and then you're nice to them, or they know how to respond to that. But that's not your responsibility anymore, because you're not going to take that personal. However, you know, I am very responsible for what I say, but I'm not responsible for what you hear, that kind of a thing. And so while you juggle with all of these agreements, and then you get into, what about everybody else? What are they doing? They're not privy to this information now that you're using as your tool, and I know that most of you are like, duh, those are so easy, really easy to understand, but once again, applying them can be challenging. So this was the first real spiritual book that I'd read, and then he told me about there are others, and so I read a couple of the others, and then I learned that there was a whole book for the 5th agreement. Well, a whole book. I wasn't much of a reader at the time, and I definitely cheat. I like the Audible stuff. And I was on a plane a lot, and I just plugged in and just listened. Whether I was hearing it or not, it somehow soaked in. But no matter what, the 5th agreement. I'm up here talking, and I'm telling you maybe new stuff, or anybody that you ever get to listen to. Instinctively, we do this, where you initiate a sense of skepticism, where, okay, let's listen to the story. What is this person saying to me? Does it make sense? Can I flow with it, or do I get up and leave the room, or whatever, you know, exit stage left, or whatever the case might be for you. But that's exactly what the 5th agreement says, is that you are to be skeptical, but learn to listen. Even your kids, man. My kids, well, I've got twin, they're 17-year-old girls, and I remember at the age 8 reading something that said that an 8-year-old's mind is pure gold. It's like unadulterated, and you're going to get the gist of whatever. You don't overcomplicate things, but you'll get the gist of it. And so that's the mindset. You can take yourself back to your 8-year-old self and how did I respond to things then? Or whatever age that you bring your awareness to. And with these 5 agreements now, like I said, know that you're going to break them. And you're going to have a problem with this, that, or the other. It could be a telemarketer that calls you up and puts you in a tizzy, no matter what they're trying to sell, just that they bugged you out of whatever you were doing. And so, I promise you, before this day is over, you probably challenge yourself with all of them if you remember them, but no matter what, bring yourself back to center. There's a real neat trick that you can do to bring yourself back to center when you're struggling the hardest. A separate author introduced me to a concept where, we could all do this right now if you want, but no matter what, put yourself in a situation, if you can do it, and close your eyes, and then, with your internal voice, say hello, and then say it again. Get to the point where you're screaming hello at yourself. And while you do this, it's kind of like this is the reconnection with yourself, so that are you the person screaming or the one listening? It's kind of a combination of the two. But that is you. That is your center of awareness, and whatever applies to that. And then whatever caused you to get in that moment, you can break it down to each of these agreements. Which one did I break? Why did I break it? Go back to your childhood if you want to. Maybe it was just last year something happened that caused you to go off adrift. And then readdress it to the person and be there for who you were then, now type of thing. Okay, we'll catch this the next time. And I really would love to keep rambling on and go on forever with stories, but I encourage you to check out what the Toltecs talk about. They refer to themselves as the dream masters. It's kind of like we're in a waking dream, what we are as people and what we're here to do. They consider a 24/7 dream state that we're in. We just happen to be awake right now, which is very relevant and powerful, but equate it to how well you're dreaming too, because those are answering a lot of things too. That's why I really love the mediumship stuff, because it gets out beyond ourselves, little reminders of who we are, where we came from, what we should be doing, a lot of those types of things. Really neat self-centeredness, but I'll share one more thing or two more things. This awareness that once we solve, well, not so much solve, but continuously work hard, it will raise your frequency, your vibrance dramatically. And just as you all came together, it's a high vibration area for sure. How can you not feel good, in a situation like this? But once you step outside and you go to the grocery store, it kind of changes a bit, doesn't it? So getting back to the center state, you can do that all the time. And you can pick a mantra or whatever you would like to float in your head when you're going through a difficult time, whatever the case is. Stop, close your eyes, scream hello at yourself, remind yourself, hey, I'm here. And the rest of it doesn't matter. I'm probably taking something personal again or whatever the situation is. But, and the last thing I'll share is it's a statement that's even on my business card for my side business. And it's, why are we all here? Why are we all here? And the best answer that I've ever heard is, we're here to walk each other home. And so, without further ado, thank you guys so much for this opportunity to talk. And if you have any questions, feel free to take them right now, but if not, I'm happy to talk to you.